So this super Christian guy is about to unalive his own wife. And unfortunately, he's gonna get away with it. Now the guy, his name's Colin. And Colin is a very religious dude. He's also a dentist. But one day, at a church activity, he meets this woman. Her name's Hazel. And Colin thinks Hazel is fine. So they hit it off, and pretty soon, Colin and Hazel low-key start smashing. Here's the problem with that, though. Colin is actually already married, and he has a bunch of kids. And here's the other problem with that. Hazel is also married with kids. Regardless, they secretly keep their affair going, and they just keep smashing away. And this goes on for a few months. But then, they get busted. Someone from the church they go to is at a local park, and he catches them in the act. And he tells the pastor at their church, and pastor tells Colin's wife, and this blows their whole affair wide open. And so, Colin and Hazel each have to go to their respective spouses and confess that they're having an affair. Now, Colin's wife, who we'll just call Colin's wife, she's absolutely devastated by this news, and she can't handle it. And eventually, she tries to unalive herself with sleeping pills. But lucky for her, she's not successful. She survives. However, allegedly, Colin finds her suicide note. And this suicide note gives him an idea of how to solve his problem. Because despite all the trauma he's caused his wife, he still really wants to keep smashing with Hazel. Now, he could go and just get a divorce, and Hazel could get a divorce, and then they could just be together like normal people. But they decide they can't do that. Because remember, he is a super religious Christian, and so is she. And because of that, they decide divorce is just not an option. I mean, it's frowned upon by the church. Instead, they go a different route. And Colin and Hazel come up with a plan. They're gonna unalive each other's spouses so that they can be together and that they can live happily ever after. So they're too religious for divorce, but not too religious for murder. Got it. So anyway, one night, Colin's wife is asleep in the living room, on the couch. And this is not surprising, since they're having so many problems in their marriage. But Colin, he sneaks into the garage, and he's got some kind of hose. And he attaches that hose to the exhaust pipe of their car while the car is running. Then, he takes the other end of that hose, and he sneaks into the living room, and he holds it near his wife's face. Now, obviously, he's trying to poison her with carbon monoxide by trying to get her to inhale the fumes from the running car. And she does breathe in these fumes, but she doesn't immediately die. Instead, she wakes up and her eyes open and she starts to struggle because she realizes she can't really breathe. And Colin, he holds her down and he covers her face with a quilt and he sticks the hose under there. And she struggles and she takes her last few breaths until she's unalived. Then, Colin carries her body and he puts it in the trunk of his car and he drives toward Hazel's house. Meanwhile, over at Hazel's house, she is completing her part of the plan. And her husband is there at the house with her, this guy, and she low-key slips him some sedatives, and he passes out. He's asleep. Then, Colin arrives, and he does the same thing he did to his wife. He attaches the hose to the exhaust of his car again, and he creeps into the bedroom with that hose, and he puts it near the husband's face so that he'll breathe in the fumes. And then husband wakes up and there's a struggle and a fight, but husband is just too sedated and he loses the fight and Colin holds him down and puts the hose up to his face and he breathes in too much of the fumes and husband ultimately dies. Then Colin moves the body to the car where his wife's body is and he drives the bodies over to another family member's house. And he parks the car in the garage and he arranges the husband in the front seat and he puts his wife in the back seat. Then he hooks up a hose to the exhaust pipe and he runs it up to the window. And he makes it look like they were trying to carbon monoxide poison themselves, like it was a double suicide. And he reports it to the police, and police eventually find the bodies, and they believe the story, that it was a double suicide. And I don't really think police do a very good job of investigating this. They're just like, yep, two people who didn't really know each other decided to unalive themselves together? Huh, that makes sense. Case closed. Anyway, then, to make it worse, the medical examiner examines the bodies, and they agree, and they rule it a double suicide.